In today's episode, I want to pick up where I left off in my sermon this past weekend and help us all think a little bit more about what our story is, how we got where we are, and how God has been present with us through it all. Stay tuned. Hello, friends. Pastor Tim Westermeyer here, Senior Pastor of St. Philip the Deacon in the western suburbs of Minneapolis. Good to be with you as always. I want to sort of pick up or continue maybe the sermon I preached this past weekend. The Old Testament reading for the sermon was 1 Kings chapter 19, which is where the prophet Elijah hears the voice of God, not in the earthquake or the wind or the fire, but in a gentle whisper or a still small voice. We'll link to that sermon in case you're interested in hearing it. What that passage prompted me to preach about was a response actually to an essay that I wrote as a senior in college, where it was the class was Death, Life, and Meaning. It was one of the last classes I took, and this paper, which I wrote probably a week or two before graduating, was sort of my reflections on trying to find sort of, I guess I'd call it my purpose in life, which I'd been sort of sitting with during college and had not yet sort of fully discovered. I was admitting that in this paper, and the professor, in response, and again I talked about this, began his comments to me by saying, "Remember Elijah, God was in the gentle whisper rather than the earthquake or the strong wind." And then he gave the citation, 1 Kings 19. And as I discussed, that sort of got me thinking as I left college, and honestly, probably for the next decade, as I was pursuing finding my purpose in life, I think that comment really did genuinely recalibrate my eyes and my ears to recognize, okay, maybe I'm looking for my purpose in the wrong places or listening to the wrong voices, and maybe I need to do a better job of listening to that still small voice, the gentle whisper. Anyway, again, I preached about all that on Sunday, and you can listen to the sermon. My thought today, though, the sort of continuation of that, is as part of finding that essay, which I still had. I mean, it's right here. I discovered a bunch of other papers as well, including this folder, which is titled Grad School Correspondence. So this was sort of as I was beginning to my studies at Notre Dame, leaving behind my career in PR. In this folder is a whole bunch of correspondence with people I'd worked with. Maybe it actually included a correspondence with the professor who I'd written this paper for, sort of sending him both the essay I had written as well as an application essay for graduate school, just to let him know, hey, I thought you might be interested in this. And it was really fun to read all of those and to sort of remember, even in a cursory way, sort of what was going on in my mind, and also recognize how important conversations, emails, and email was pretty new back then, correspondence through the actual old school mail system, how important that was for me as I was making that transition. And so I did not mention this in my sermon, but the professor in this paper wrote a number of things on the paper, beginning, as I said, with the quote about Elijah. But then he said this is a wonderful statement, and then he ended by saying, be sure to keep it and reread and rewrite it. And rereading it now all these years later, I mean, this is, 36 years later. It's probably the first time I've reread it in a while. And it made me realize how much God has answered my questions about finding meaning and purpose in my life, and how and this is what we all pray for, I suppose, as we get older, how much better I understand the story of my life than I did then. And of course, part of that is because much more of my life is in the rearview mirror than ahead of me than was true at the time. But I guess I'm pausing in my own mind and heart to sort of be grateful for all of the people who have been part of the journey that I've enjoyed during my life, all the conversation partners, all the correspondence, all of the the wisdom I've received from people along the way when I've had questions or when I've been at a crossroads and wondered, do I turn left? Do I turn right? Which way do I go? All of that has helped me, in retrospect now, understand my story more fully. And I guess the simple point I want to make today is maybe to encourage you. You're not going to have the same kind of essays, the same kind of correspondence I had, but all of us as we go through life have, inflection points where we, again, have to turn right or have to turn left, or life throws us a curve. And I'd invite you just to think back on your life and some of those important moments, and also some of the people who've been with you for those moments, to help you be aware of how God has been present with you through it all, right? I think one of the dangers we have as people of faith is we kind of come to believe that our lives are our own, or that we've created ourselves, or that we've done everything on our own. And as we reflect on our life, I think we become more aware of how supported we've been by family and friends, and therefore by God, who has worked through those people. So a simple invitation maybe to pause maybe today and reflect on your own history, your own path, your own journey, and pay attention maybe in a particular way to the people who have been there for you and with you to help bring you to where you are today. And I hope, like me, you find yourself in a place where you're able to say, thank you, God, for all of it. It's been a wonderful ride. And by the way, I'm looking forward to far more adventures in the future, just to be clear. But I feel profoundly grateful for the way God has answered many of my prayers to this point, not always in the way that I would have hoped for or expected, to be clear. And that's part of the adventure of life as well. But it is a wonderful adventure. And as always, I'm delighted to be on that journey with each of you. And I'm grateful for your time today. And if you have reflections about what I've just shared and are willing to share them, as always, I'd love to hear your comments in the section below, or you're welcome to text me or email me. And again, until next time, as always, be well, stay in touch, and God bless.